Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners and staff, and welcome to the City of Paterson Board of Adjustment meeting of Thursday, February 10th, 2022. Chairman Thaxton, you may continue, sir.
Here we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Chairman Thaxton, the notice requirement of the open public meeting law has been satisfied with respect to this meeting, specifying the time, date, and location included in the annual notice adopted at the reorganization meeting of the board, filed with the clerk of the City of Paterson, posted in City Hall, and mailed to at least 2 newspapers in accordance with the provisions of the law. I will now continue with the roll. Commissioners, Commissioner Baralt. Commissioner Baralt. Are you there, sir? Absent. Commissioner Furman?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Minaudo?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Watkins?
Watkins present.
Thank you. Commissioner White? Commissioner White? She is there, but I don't hear her. Can you hear me, Commissioner White? I'll come back. Commissioner Urbanus?
Present.
Commissioner Vega? He is absent today. Commissioner White? Okay, let me just make a quick call. One moment.
Hi Maggie, I'm sorry, but my computer had shut off, so I'm here. I'm present.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry.
I was just calling you. Okay.
Yeah.
You are present. Commissioner Rohim?
Present.
Thank you. And Chairman Thaxton?
Present.
Thank you. I will proceed with the agenda. Notice pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act addressing effect of coronavirus measures on the next public meeting, consistent with the coronavirus-related restrictions of Executive Order Number 107, given on Saturday, March 21st, 2020, by Governor Philip D. Murphy. The Board of Adjustment of the City of Paterson will not conduct in-person participation of the public at all future meetings until further notice. However, public participation will be available by means of communication equipment pursuant to NJSA 10-4-8. Excuse me, I'm having trouble with my voice today. Commencing on Wednesday, April 23rd, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. Though there may be potentially be a practical need for a limited number of administrative, technical, or other city personnel to be present in or near the council chambers, 3rd floor, City Hall, 155 Market Street, Paterson, New Jersey, in participation of the public is prohibited. Nevertheless, For reasons of compliance with the said Executive Order Number 107, public participation will be available by calling 973-321-1579. Meeting ID number 711-680-001. Board of Adjustment regular meeting of Thursday, February 10th at 7:30 p.m. On the date and time that the meeting is scheduled to commence, the public may also participate in the meeting by accessing the website of the City of Paterson at www.patersonnj.gov. Today's first case is 29-36 Canal Street, LLC, 29-36 Canal Street, Block 5509, Lot 9. This is a reconsideration of denial at the hearing of October 20th, 2020. Application to demolish an existing two-story building and then construct a three-story, 5-unit building on a 5,441.77 square foot lot. The minimum lot is in an I-1 zone is 10,000 square feet. The first floor will contain 8 covered parking spaces, 1 apartment and a 2-car garage. The second through third floors will consist of 2 one-bedroom apartments per floor and a community room for a total of 5 one-bedroom apartments in the proposed building. The applicant is providing 10 of the 9 parking spaces that are required. This was for use both in site plan in an I-1 zone. Is the applicant present? Let me continue reading. The revised plans reflect a reduction from 5 residential units to 4 units and eliminates for parking variances. Is the applicant present? Mr. Maricombe, cannot hear you. Your mic.
I am present. Sorry, I couldn't join in before. Commissioner Morales.
Your attendance is noted, Commissioner Hector Baralt.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, we're ready to proceed.
Thank you. All right,
Mr. Chairman?
we'll go on to the next case, which is Al Amanal Food Market LLC, 377 Getty Avenue, Block 7001, Lot 19. Excuse me.
Applicant's present.
This is a reconsideration of denial at the hearing of November 30th, 2021. This was an application to convert an existing auto repair into a retail space, which is not permitted in the R-2 zone. The applicant proposes to construct on a 7,500 square foot lot, or 75 by 100, to accommodate a supermarket on the first floor with office spaces on the second floor. The applicant proposes a rear yard of 4.6 feet, whereas 20 feet is required. The applicant proposes building coverage at 58.5%, whereas 40% is permitted. The applicant proposes 5 parking spaces, whereas 24 are required. This was for use both in site plan and Passaic County Planning Board review in an R-2 zone, low-medium density residential. The revised plans and substantial modifications are as follows. Number 1, the applicant has reduced the sales storage areas and has added indoor parking for employees only. All outdoor parking will be for customers only from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. New plans are also provide additional parallel parking with a variance for driveway width and 2 leased spaces on an adjacent lot. A loading zone is now proposed on Getty Ave along the store frontage. Is the applicant present?
Applicant's present and ready.
Thank you, Mr. Maricondo. Lastly is Fortress Holdings LLC, 322-324 Berkshire Avenue, Block 1218, Lot 18. This is an application to use a parking lot to support the principal use of a banquet catering hall with restaurant use located at 555 Breakfast Avenue in Totowa, New Jersey. The applicant proposes to place 40 parking spaces to be assessed only by valet or employees of the banquet catering hall with restaurant use. No patron will be permitted to access same. Of the 40 spaces proposed for the parking lot, approximately 17.5 spaces are located within the geographic confines of the city of Paterson. At the municipal building line intersects the property. No direct access to or from Berkshire in Paterson is proposed. The portion of the property is proposed to be utilized as additional parking when and if needed for this banquet catering hall with restaurant use. This was for use spoken site plan in an R1 zone, and it was carried from November 30th, 2021. Is the applicant present?
Yep, it is present, ready to proceed.
Thank you,
Opposition
Chair.
is present and ready to proceed, Maggie.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I will now hand the meeting over to our chairman, Chairman Thaxton. Thank you very much.
Let's take item number 1 for reconsideration.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Commissioners. Al Mariconda, 726 Market Street, Paterson. On behalf of the applicant, as set forth on your agenda and the revised plans submitted to your board staff several months ago, and also forwarded to your planner, this is a very simple downward modification, in our opinion. We had a statutory denial. We had a majority vote of 4-3, and we've reduced the 5 units down to 4 units, which we believe is a substantial modification, and also reduces the parking variance at this time. So the site plan is modified in that respect, and all other respects were essentially the same. And I will leave it to Mr. Paparazzi, but I believe that he would agree that, with regard to the nature of the modification.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe that based on the proposal, there is a reason for reconsideration. Although, Mr. Mariconda, I never.
Yes, sir.
I notified you that today earlier, so if you can you please have a statement or yourself electronically send them to me, so I
Okay.
can review it before.
I thought you got them late in the day, but their hard copies were supposed to have been forwarded to you, of course, but I will make sure that an email copy will get to you tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask respectfully for consideration of the request to be returned to the agenda be considered at this time.
Okay, commissioners, and commissioners have questions. Seeing none, then Maggie, can you hold the board for a vote, please?
Thank you. We have no callers at this time. One moment, please. Commissioners, this is a reconsideration for 29-36 Canal Street. Commissioners, Commissioner Barrow.
Excuse me, can we
Sorry.
get
Yes,
motion?
you're correct. Can I have a first motion on this reconsideration, please? Any commissioner?
A motion to reconsider.
Thank you,
Commissioner White.
I second the motion, Commissioner Baralt.
Okay, first motion, Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Baralt. Commissioners, Commissioner Rohim, your vote, sir. Commissioner Baralt.
Yes.
Commissioner Furman.
Yes.
Commissioner Minaudo.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Watkins.
I'm gonna vote yes based on the fact going forward that Gary has all the paperwork and plans that he's supposed to have when he's supposed to have them. Yes.
Thank you very much. Commissioner White.
Yes.
Commissioner Rohim. Commissioner Rohim, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Your votes are on this reconsideration?
Yes.
Thank you. And Chairman Thaxton?
Yes.
This reconsideration has been granted, and the date for this application will be April 14th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Chairman Thaxton?
Case number 2.
Yes, again, Alan Maricondo on behalf of the applicant, Alamana Food Market, INC. As per your agenda, this was a statutory denial as well, with a 4-3 vote in the affirmative. This is an application where the submitted revised plans have addressed all the issues we believe that the board raised at the last meeting. And it, almost verbatim from your agenda, we reduced the sales and storage area and have added indoor parking for the employees. So those were two of the crucial points. We also add all outdoor parking to be designated for the customers. We also provided some additional parallel parking with a variance for driveway width. And we're also able to lease 2 spaces from the adjoining lots. And now we've also presented a loading zone on Getty Avenue to accommodate deliveries and to alleviate any concerns about traffic backups that might occur along the frontage of the store. So those plans are of record on file, and I would respectfully ask again for a motion for reconsideration.
Gary?
Yeah, okay, Chairman, Mr. Maricondo, I have new plans dated 12/6/21. Are those the plans that we are looking at?
Yes, yes,
Okay, just one thing, I did not receive the lease for,
okay,
for the,
2 spaces.
right, you need to send that to me as well, so I can include that in my, report, and,
Right.
okay, thank you, and, Mr. Chairman, I believe that there are enough changes to, for the board to consider reconsideration.
Any commissioners have questions?
Commissioner Watkins. I saw where you said you was making changes to indoor parking. Does that indicate how many of those indoor parking spaces are for the employees versus outside?
The indoor spaces would be allocated for employees only. I can have Anwar from AK Architecture specify how many spaces those are. I believe he's on. Anwar, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. One of the commissioners would like to know how you set up the indoor parking.
Okay, so we have 3 parking spaces inside the garage. Will be designated for the employees. So the garage itself remains a garage. We used to propose it as a storage, but now will be only a parking garage and a garbage contamination area for the supermarket. So they will be inside 3 parking spaces.
And out of the 24 parking spaces, is it 24 parking spaces?
No,
Is it 24
because we
parking
reduced.
spaces?
Sorry, because we reduced the retail, the requirement for parking have been reduced as well. So now I think we need to have 18 parking spaces instead of 24.
Because of the size of the building being reduced.
This is because of the size of the retail area being reduced.
Right, the retail area, yes.
Okay. Yes,
Yes.
for reconsideration.
Maggie, excuse me. Who's the attorney for tonight?
Chairman Thaxton, hey, it's Mark Ruby filling in for Marco LaRocca.
Okay. Now, Maggie, can you open it up to the public, please?
Yes, Chairman. If you're a member of the public, you can contact 973-321-1579. Meeting ID number 711-680-001. Thank you. We have no callers at this time, Chairman.
Okay. Then, can I get a motion for reconsideration, please?
Commissioner Furman, I'd like to make the first motion for consideration.
Go ahead, Commissioner. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yes, I'm making now the first motion.
Is there a second?
Yes, Commissioner Baralt, I second the motion, providing the missing lease are provided.
Okay, Maggie, can you hold the board for a vote, please?
Yes, sir. First by Commissioner Furman, second by Commissioner Baralt. Commissioner Baralt, your vote, sir.
Yes.
Commissioner Furman.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Minaudo.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Watkins.
Yes.
Thank you as well, Commissioner White.
Yes.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Rohim
Yes.
and Chairman Thaxton.
Yes.
This reconsideration has been granted.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Do you have a date?
Yes, the date would be April 24th, April 28th, my apologies, 2022 at 7:30 p.m.
April 28th?
April 28th.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You may proceed.
Mr. Mariconda,
Yes, sir.
before you, the parking that you propose, for the employees blocks the dumpsters. So just address that at, before the April 28th meeting.
Okay, Anwar, are you still on? You heard that comment from Mr. Paparazzi?
Yes, I did. I heard the comment, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next case.
This case will be Fortress Holdings LLC, 322, 324 Berkshire Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, William Rush, on behalf of the applicant, Fortress Holdings. This is, I believe, our third meeting, and we're entering about 9 hours now of testimony on an application for approximately 16 to 17 parking spots in the city of Paterson. Originally, we finished and completed our direct presentation at the first meeting held back in October. Since then, most of the meetings have been, time has been utilized by objectors to the application. But before we begin tonight, there is some additional information that I think is necessary for the board to hear. And I would like to recall the owner of Fortress Holdings, Paul Casas, to testify this evening.
Okay. Tonight we're here to discuss a parking lot considered for Fortress Holdings. That's the only item that we're going to discuss, the city of Paterson parking for Fortress Holdings. No other total or any other business will not be heard tonight. We're just here to discuss the parking lot for Fortress Holdings. Mr. Russ, go ahead.
Mr. Casas, are you able to actually put yourself on video?
No, that's why I'm using my phone. My camera's not working, my sound's not working also, the camera.
Obviously, then we'll have to just proceed with you audibly.
Sure.
I don't know if you'd like to swear him in again. He was sworn in at the original October meeting. Council, it's up to you.
Why don't we just do it?
I'm joking, sure. If you want to swear him in.
Okay, Mr. Deceased, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be truthful?
I do.
Okay.
Okay, Paul, just to re-verify, you are in fact the sole owner of Fortress Holdings LLC, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And as I stated earlier, this is the third meeting for this application for approximately 17 parking spaces on half of a lot in the city of Paterson, correct?
Correct.
And as I said earlier, we're entering about 9 hours now of testimony. So my question for you, as you sit here tonight, is if this meeting again gets basically hijacked by the objectors and they continue to basically just run the clock on this hearing, are you going to agree to allow this application to be carried to another meeting?
No.
So if this application is not voted on tonight, you intend to withdraw this application?
Correct.
Okay. And if you withdraw this application, then we will basically have to make an application for a site plan amendment in Totowa, correct?
Correct.
And more or less the site plan amendment in Totowa would simply be for the fact that we're not going to utilize these 16 to 17 parking spaces that are now being proposed in the city of Paterson.
That's correct.
Okay. So just to take a step back, when you first testified in October, we're currently now proposing that we're going to have no access to the site from Berkshire Avenue. Is that correct?
Correct.
And also, as part of the application, you're going to be proposing significant buffering of the parking spaces, primarily a fence and several arborvitaes being installed at a decent size to prevent any lights and also mitigate sound. Is that correct?
Correct.
If we withdraw this application tonight, how do you intend to use this lot going forward after we make our application for the amended site plan in Totowa?
Well, obviously there'll be no need for any buffering, so I will continue to use the lot as whatever is intended for its use, and I would allow access from Berkshire.
So do you intend on paving the lot?
Correct.
Will it be a driveway, more or less, for access to your site in Totowa?
That's correct.
Will there be any buffering?
No.
Will there be any landscaping or arborvitaes at this time?
No. Nor there will be detention system.
Okay, yes, that's true, so there'll be no retention system either for this lot. Also, again, this application is really simply for overflow parking from your facility in Totowa, correct?
Correct.
And because of that, will withdrawing this application have any significant impact on your Totowa facility?
Not at all.
So basically, what we're more or less saying tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the benefit to the citizens of Paterson is much greater with this application being approved than denied. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely.
I have no further questions for Mr. Case. Mr. Chairman? I think Mr. Case is trying to speak, but he's on mute, I believe. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay. Can I just go over a few things with the...
Go ahead, Gary. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Cases, I want to just make sure we're going over the same issues that Mr. Rush did. So if the application was approved, your entrance on Berkshire Avenue would be permanently closed. Is that correct? If the application was approved, it would be permanently closed, so there would be no traffic going on Berkshire Avenue accessing this property. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, along with those other conditions from Mr. Rush, you also said, I think last time, that there was some, I guess, from storms, some stones or some tree limbs or branches that happened to come down onto either Berkshire or Linwood, and you said obviously if obviously from Berkshire and Linwood from your site that you would follow up and have that cleaned up. I just want to make sure because I'm trying to cover I think what the residents wanted, so I want to make sure that this is on the record.
Any debris that went to Berkshire came from the adjacent property, but it come from my site. But nonetheless, I did send a crew to clean it, just to be a good neighbor. So I sent my crew about 8 to 10 people with 2 machines, and they cleaned it all day long. And again, it came from the adjacent property, it didn't come from my site, and I have photos and videos to prove. In fact, Mr. Jackson and Mr. Sue, they came and visited the site, and they saw that the debris came from the adjacent property.
That is true. Anything on Berkshire would come from the adjacent property because your access is along the east side of Berkshire and it doesn't go across Berkshire. But as far as, let's say, Linwood and Sherwood, I'm sorry, if there is any issues there, you would also address them, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And that buffer of arborvitae's that you are proposing will be substantial, like, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 feet or 8 to 10 feet to start, so it would grow in as a good buffer, but it should start as at least a decent buffer. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you do agree to the plan from MCB Engineering says that you are going to put the dry well in on that lot 18, the lot in Paterson. You're putting in, looks like 2 dry wells to collect any water runoff from that lot. Is that also correct?
If the application is approved, yes, that's correct.
Right, okay, all right. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for the owner.
Alrighty,
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
yeah. Yes,
Michael Cates on behalf of the opposition. If I can just ask a question first of Mr. Paparazzi, who just testified on behalf of the applicant. If in fact the applicant were to do anything on the Paterson lot, pave it, provide access to his Totowa site, he'd have to come before this board for a site plan approval, would he not? He couldn't do it independently.
If you're asking me, if he has to put a driveway in, all he needs is a permit. There's no site plan for a driveway on your lot.
He talked about paving, he talked about a number of things that he would both ignore and would do, and any use of that property accessory to a commercial enterprise in a residential zone, he would have to come before this board, would he not?
No, if the lot is excluded, Mr. Cates, there is no application. If the lot is
That's not what I heard him say. I heard him say he could use the Paterson lot for a list of activities that he mentioned.
for access, yes.
And my point is,
I'm sorry.
and my question is, if he's offering or developing the Paterson lot for access to a commercial space in Totowa, doesn't he need to come before this board?
No, put a driveway in, and I think that's all he was saying. If he put in a driveway, he would not have to come in front of the zoning board. He would just need a permit from the building department.
Gentlemen, I would just say that it's not ripe yet. I mean, if the applicant pulls the application tonight, okay, that's his prerogative. However, anything that he does, we can't really comment on until we see some kind of a submission. If he applies for a permit and the permit triggers some type of land use board review, then obviously the applicant would be would have to comply with all applicable law, but we can't really give any kind of an advisory opinion or stamp until we see some kind of a filing.
I don't disagree with you, Mr. Ruby, but he was using this argument to both terrorize the neighbors and to brainwash the board. To say that if they didn't grant him the approval, he'd pull up his wagon and you know, it's kind of like a threat. And I am very much am opposed to that. Look, we're ready to proceed. We have a few witnesses, neighbors, residents who want to testify, and I want to do a summation, and we'll be done tonight. This idea that my clients would be hijacking the hearing tonight is an absurdity, also an accusation without merit. I represent some people trying to protect their homes in Paterson, and we're ready to proceed. The rest of this is all nonsense, and again, I object to Mr. Paparazzi leading the witness and taking sides here. There's no objectivity on this.
Sorry, hello, just so the record's clear, Ms. Patel, on behalf of the applicant.
Ms. Patel,
Ma'am, you cannot speak at this time.
hang on, Ms. Patel. Mr. Cates, I was just confirming what he said. I'm not leading anybody. What happened was, I wanted it to be clear on the record. And that's what I said when I started. I want this to be clear on the record. I did not lead him. I repeated what he had said, and I asked him if it was true. And I asked him if he would plant the arborvitae like he said. I asked him if he would do the drainage like it is proposed. I asked him if he would permanently close off Berkshire like he said. I asked him if he would clean up the road like he said. I was not leading the witness, sir.
You didn't have to answer any of that. It was already in the record, those promises.
I wanted to confirm it, sir, again, because I'm here to protect the residents, and that's what I did.
Mary,
What I want to make is that Ms. Patel and Mr. Rush are both representing the applicant. I can't be double teamed by two attorneys. One of you is going to speak and one of you isn't.
all right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to admonish the board in no uncertain terms that any decision that is made tonight, should the applicant proceed to a decision here tonight, please, please, please do not base any kind of the decision that you are going to make on the applicant's indication of what he might or might not do down the road. Please, let's just keep it to the evidence that we have here. That's not evidence. It's speculative. It's subject to a whole lot of ifs and subsequent happenings and things. So I think that Objectors Counsel, Mr. Cates, makes a good point, and I'm going to admonish you accordingly.
Mr. Rush, can you call your first witness, please?
I have no further witnesses, Mr. Chairman.
No testimony at all?
None whatsoever. We put in our entire case in 1 hour in the October 2021 meeting.
Hey, Mr. Cates.
Yes, Chairman Thaxton, at the last meeting, we presented our planner, who's also an engineer, Harry Tuvell. I wanted to give this meeting over to my clients, some of whom I see are in attendance, to ask them if they wanted to express their feelings about the application without me necessarily having to give them a question and answer. I see Mr. David Dennis. Mr. Dennis, could you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you want to give comments to the board? If so, I would ask you to be sworn.
Yes, I would.
Please raise your right hand, sir. You swear affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I will.
Here.
My name is David Dennis. I live at 217 Berkshire Avenue, Paterson, New Jersey.
Can you repeat your address again? I didn't hear it.
317 Berkshire Avenue, Paterson, New Jersey, 07502.
Thank you very much, sir.
Due to the elevation of 555 Preakness Avenue, Totowa, serious stormwater management is a necessity. Based upon fallen rock, debris that my property suffered during the year.
during and after Hurricane Ida, which occurred after applicant had cleared this woodland behind our property for the construction of retaining wall, driveway, and subject parking lot. The Hillcrest neighborhood in particular vulnerable. The best protection is to deny the applicant and refer the matter to the city engineer to restore stormwater protection. Thank you.
Is that all you have, Mr. Dennis?
That's all I have.
My next client is Jim Durkin, who my understanding is worked tonight. His job ended at 8 o'clock, and he was supposed to be calling in. Could I ask the clerk whether there are any phone holding people?
One moment.
And Maggie, could you just also please see if there were any questions from the public for the opposition's witness?
Okay, we have no callers at this time.
Okay.
I see the name.
Excuse me?
Maggie, it's David Sue. I just wanted to make a
David,
comment.
you're not part of my case.
No, I'm not. This is Mr. Quises had said what I
David,
observed.
Sir.
I have the microphone, and I want
Mr. Sue, you're out of order. You're out of order, and we're going to mute you. If you're completely out of order right now.
When the public is, I think the chairman asked for other public comments, I'd be willing to step aside for a moment if the chairman wants to proceed that way. Otherwise, I want to make sure that, and my other witnesses have had a chance to say anything if they're here.
Case, just call your next witness, please.
Well, I'm not calling the witness. I see in attendance some others, but perhaps they aren't prepared to say anything. If you can unmute yourselves and identify yourselves, it would be the appropriate time. Seeing none, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Michael, it's Dennis. Am I allowed to speak, I guess? Or?
Yes, Mr. Queller. Mr. Queller's a client, and I ask that he be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I am a resident of 299 Berkshire Avenue as well. And obviously the building is a concern to me as well. I know the previous person had said, a lot about the stormwater and the debris. And to be honest, ever since I moved into this house, I had never, even when it rained or stormed like that, it had never been an issue with rocks. But, this time, all that stuff, all that debris, ever since that construction started, first of all, on top of all the noise and all the stuff that may go on in the mornings on Saturdays and things of that nature, all that stuff came down, kind of destroyed the front bumper of my car, had to get that repaired and stuff. I had never seen anything like that before. It's all over the street. It's pretty dangerous, but that's obviously a pretty big concern. And also as well, up until this point, me living here, there had never been any issues in terms of basement flooding. And that was one of the first times where I had actually seen, water, a little bit of water in my basement, kind of a lot. And speaking with other neighbors as well that have lived here, they also don't ever experience water. And they had also seen a lot of water in their houses as well. So it's a very big concern. And another issue, with that particular building or that property, typically this neighborhood, another reason I purchased a home here is that it's a very quiet neighborhood. There's not a lot of activity. There's no cars. There's no trucks. We're right by a school. And, if in any case, however they're going to use it, which to be honest, catering hall, however, catering hall can just be a fancy name for, whatever will go on. It could be some kind of, party thing or something people celebrate and stuff like that. If there's going to be patrons or car valets, this could cause disturbances, and it's a very quiet neighborhood. It's a very peaceful neighborhood. So, once again,
I know you guys can't enforce anything, and it's not near your homes, but, near us, all these things that are gonna go on, it's gonna occur during the weekday, during the nighttime, and if there's noises and things like that, it could put a burden on us, if we'd have to constantly call police and stuff, so it doesn't really seem right. But those are just honestly some of my concerns as a, person who's lived in Paterson most of his life. And, one of the main reasons that I bought this house was the peace and quiet. And it seems with all this stuff, that's, something that's most certainly disturbed the peace. And especially with the storm that happened last March or last spring, that was, sort of an extremely big concern, because I know they say that it's not part of their construction, but how come in all my time living here that was the first time that all that debris came down is after that construction? So, that's just some of my concerns, and, just wanted to raise my hand and speak and just let those concerns be known.
I'd just like to just question Mr. Shea, just briefly, just to clarify some of his testimony. Were you stating that the debris and the concerns are coming from the site in Totowa?
What do you mean?
Well, you're saying that rocks were coming down and things of that nature. Where were they coming from? Were they coming from the site in Totowa, or were they coming from?
As far as I'm concerned, they look like they were coming right from where that lot was.
Okay, but you do know that the Totowa site has been approved already, correct?
I'm not aware. I'm not sure.
I can make you aware. The Totowa site has been approved. And also, I don't know if you hear my client's testimony earlier tonight that if this application is approved, that there'd be no access to the site from Berkshire Road. So there'd be absolutely no traffic whatsoever from his site on Berkshire Road. I just want to know if you heard that testimony.
Yes, I did hear that.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Chairman, just if I can again renew the request to make sure that Mr. Durkin is trying or not trying to call in.
I do see a Jim there, but he doesn't connect. Mr. Durkin, if you hear me, can you please unmute yourself, sir? It's *6 on your phone. If you're calling in, that should unmute you.
Mr. Case, if you want to just take a minute and step away and make a phone call, you're free to do that.
All right, I'll do that. Bear with me. Thank you.
Mr. Durkin is calling in now. We'll get him on soon.
About 5 minutes.
Yes. Mr. Cates, do you have any other callers?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I see a Henry Savell. Who is that?
Harry Chuvel is our expert. He's our planner.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Has he reached you, Matthew?
Mr. Durkin, can you hear me, sir?
I have you, Mrs. Baker.
There he is. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jim, you're going to be put under oath, and then I'm going to simply ask you to relate your concerns to the board through your phone, all right?
Sure, very good.
Do you swear affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I certainly do.
Say your full name, please.
James Durkin,
What's your address, Jim?
294 Berkshire Avenue.
All right, please relate your concerns to the board first. Please tell them who you are.
Commissioners of the board, Mr. Chairman, I'm Jim Durkin. I'm a retired Paterson police officer. I've lived in this city for 66 years, of which 31 of them have been at this present address. I bought this house, as my neighbor said, because it was a quiet street. It was a dead-end street. In the past year and a half to 2 years, we've had trucks over 4 tons backing up the street the wrong way. Thank God it was during the COVID, because if this had been during school hours, we might have had a serious accident. We were not able to get any enforcement from the police department. We tried different avenues. This street is zoned for nothing over 4 tons, and it's marked that way, and it's been that way for a long time. This past Labor Day was the worst storm that I ever saw come down this street. And when I videotaped the water pouring down the streets, and the next morning I came out and I videotaped all of the rocks and all of the debris that went down the street as far as Chamberlain Avenue. It was horrendous. It looked like a war zone. In all my years working for the city of Paterson, which I worked for the city for 39 years, I've never, ever seen anything as bad as what I witnessed. Now, let's go on to the enforcement. If this venue opens up, this place is in total. Loud music, loud parties, lights, aggravation for the neighbors here. The Paterson police is not going to deal with that because it's not their town. The town that has to deal with it is going to be Total Borough. And for all the times that I heard complaints were sent down there, and I called in a couple myself, I've never seen a Total police car come through Paterson. They go through Wayne and down River Drive, to Valley Road to Breakness Avenue. They come the long way in when they could actually come down Chamberlain Avenue and up these streets. As far as the emergency access up here, I don't want that. None of my neighbors want that. We don't want any access up there. They built it up there. That's their problem. That's not the city of Paterson's problem. You know, been here a long time. I'm tired of Paterson being the dumping ground for everybody else's projects. My neighbors and I, we decided to stand up for what's right. That's why we're here tonight, and that's why we retained Mr. Cates. It's all yours, Counselor.
Well, it's first up to the board or any or Mr.
I'd like to question, Mr. Durkin briefly. Mr. Durkin, you testified that you had concerns about large trucks and noise and basically traffic on Berkshire, correct?
Correct.
I don't believe you were here earlier, you were part of the meeting earlier when my client testified. So I'll ask you if you're aware, if this application is approved, my client has agreed there's going to be absolutely no access from Berkshire. Are you aware of that?
When I see Berkshire Avenue closed off at the top, and I mean permanently closed, then I might entertain it.
Okay, well, I just want to know, are you aware that if the application is approved, that the applicant has testified that he intends to basically shut Berkshire off completely and have no access from Berkshire to the property? Are you aware of that?
Well, I'm aware of it now, Counselor.
Okay, so the approval is actually helping the situation that you're complaining about, isn't that correct?
That's one of the complaints. Now, how's the approval going to help us with the sound and the noise and everything else?
Well, I can't speak to that because that was an application that was in Totowa. And that application in Totowa has been approved. So basically, regardless of whatever action happens on this application tonight, the banquet hall in Totowa is going forward.
Unless it goes to court and it's stopped in court, correct?
Well, there's been an appeal made, and obviously Mr. Cates and I will disagree as to their chances on appeal. But that being said, if they can take an appeal, but that application is going forward, that banquet hall is going forward, and in fact, if it does get turned around on appeal, then this application was moot anyway.
True.
I just wanted to make sure, because based on some of your testimony, I wasn't sure if you had heard my client testify earlier, so I just wanted to clarify some points. But I
didn't hear that. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other clients of mine wishing to speak, then our case is finished. I'd like the opportunity for a summation, and you can decide what to do.
Before you do that, Maggie, can you open it up to the public, please? Or, excuse me, any commissioners have questions?
Commissioner Watkins. Hello, so my questions are to the owner, Paul, and Mr. Rush. Since the residents there are concerned about the debris and the water, so does that mean you're gonna put a retaining wall there so nothing comes through the fence, and don't affect, I heard one resident say how his car was affected, and their quality of life has been affected. And listening to you, Mr. Rush, like you said, the Totowa part has already been approved. So these residents are gonna hear this noise and all of this nonsense no matter what these residents say. But at least that retainer wall can be there so their cars and property not be affected. And so that's what we're concerned about on the Paterson side, that the Paterson residents aren't affected at all. So we're asking that you protect those residents on Berkshire Avenue the best you can. At our last meeting, I remember when someone mentioned the lighting, how it will affect the Berkshire residents. As a commissioner, as a Patersonian, and someone with concerns, I ask that you please take the Berkshire residents into consideration going forward. Protect their property.
Of course, Commissioner. I mean, the applicant wants to be a good neighbor, and I know it was a very long time ago, back in October, when we put our case on. But you may or may not recall, our engineer at the time had testified as to the fact that there is going to be retention basins put in. There should be no flow of water off the property based upon the way the drainage system is being designed. There was going to be a retaining wall. The sound buffering is going to be the abrevieties that are being installed at a mature height of like 6 to 8 feet with the ability to grow taller and wider to provide even further buffering. There's going to be a fence around the property as well. And also there was testimony to the fact, I understand, the concern about lighting, but the way the lighting is designed and the way they're able to design it today, that there should be no spillage off of the property. The lighting should be contained, in fact, to the client's property. And again, just addressing the noise, I didn't represent the applicant in Totowa, but I have to believe that the Totowa board did address the fact that they were aware that there's Paterson neighbors nearby and that there had to be some type of buffering for the sound and light from the Totowa side. But just to kind of clarify, I understand your position. I can appreciate that, and I think my client does as well. And he wants to be a good neighbor. He has no intentions of trying to harm these people any further. In fact, we think we're actually going to help the situation, especially with the sound.
I have a comment. I have a recommendation actually, because currently the retaining wall that I put in is open. It's open where the gate is, right? Because I didn't know what this application is going to go, whether it's going to get approved or denied. But if this application is in fact approved, what I can do is I can actually close the opening with the retaining wall. So I can connect the two retaining walls together. And this will 1,000% close Berkshire for any access to Totowa. So that would definitely prevent anyone from trying to enter the property through Paterson and Berkshire. And yes,
So Paul, you just explained how you're gonna permanently close it.
Because if you look at the site plan, there's a retaining wall on the left and on the right of that lot, and it's open where the gate is. So what I'm proposing to do actually connects the two retaining walls together, and this will act as a wall in front of the gate, so no one will be able to use the gate anymore, because there will be a 6 foot, whatever, 4 foot, 6 foot retaining wall in front of it. And
with that being said, how will the retaining walls go across the two residents that sit at the top near that fence? Will their property be protected as well? On the Berkshire side, there's the residents on the left and the right.
Yeah, because of the retaining wall. The wall will be built.
Going all the way across.
Correct.
Okay.
And I will put in Mr. Rush, talking about a retention system. The detention system that I'm putting in is costing over $100,000 and it's been reviewed by multiple engineers. And that detention system is very large and will be able to house most of the storm water on site. This way will be no runover. I mean, this has been historically, even before I built the building, they always had some runoff from that site. But now, with the retaining wall, with the detention system, with the trees, with the fence, it will definitely prevent that. So I don't know why everyone is against this. This is actually good.
Thank you, Mr. Paul and Mr. Rush.
Thank you.
Maggie, can you open it up to the public for?
Yes, sir. For members of the public, you can contact the office if you have any questions of the virtual meeting at 973-321-1579. That's 973-321-1579. Meeting ID number 711-680-001. Thank you very much. In the meantime, Chairman Thaxton, we do have Mr. Stu available as well. I'm not sure when you are going to call him, But, that is all I have at this time, and we have no callers.
Mr. Sue.
Good evening, Mr. Thaxton, Chairman, members of the board. Just one quick thing, a couple of quick things. Be very brief. First, the applicant was speaking as to what I saw and did not see when I was at the site that day when he was there with Mr. Jackson. And I don't think he can read my mind, and I don't think he knows what I saw and what my opinions are. If I could share my opinion about the circumstance, what it looks like is that there's a drainage pipe that became blocked or broken. And the earth, where the parking lot is, was moved to that location illegally without permit. And there's a letter in the record, I believe, to show that. The applicant is well aware of it. He got a cease and desist to do work on that part of the property. Now, it looks like there was probably an underground pipe, and it broke, and then the water had no place to go, and it burst, and that's why it ran down. So whether the pipe where it looked like it had broken was on a neighbor's property or his property, doesn't really matter because it looks like the pipe was broken underground. Secondly, moving on with regard to the number of parking spaces. The resolution in the record, and it states very clearly that they are calculating the number of patrons based on the number of parking spaces. So if there are more parking spaces, there are more patrons, and that will intensify the use in Totowa. So when they say there's no connection, somebody's saying there's no connection, but the reality is there's a direct connection. The more parking, the more people, the more noise, the more disruption.
Let me just address the parking issue. In fact, we did state earlier that we would go back to Totowa for an amended site plan, because if we lose these parking spaces, I believe the occupancy level has to be reduced from somewhere in the neighbor of over 600 people to maybe 550. It's very rather insignificant.
Sir, I thank you for pointing that out, but in reality, I have the floor. Correct? So, the other thing is, this end of the block, for anybody who's lived in the town for a while, knows what Attilio's was like in the top of these streets. It basically looked like a forest up there. And all that got stripped away, and it will be impossible to return that amount of buffering to that area if there's a parking lot there. So, I think the board needs to consider that. They can consider conditions, of course, but I think we have to push back on Totowa a little bit. My understanding is an adjoining property is going to be developed for residential affordable housing. And in that case, the city of Totowa, the borough of Totowa, gave a 200-foot buffer between the development and the neighbors on the adjoining properties. 200 feet. Here, I don't know.
This testimony has nothing to do with this site. There's nothing in the record regarding any affordable housing project in Totowa. This is all speculation.
Mr. Rush, you are correct. We're talking about a parking lot, Mr. Sue. Can you sort of like stick to the parking lot situation?
Well, Mr. Saxon,
concerning Totowa.
If I could clarify.
Nothing concerning Totowa.
Oh, sir, please just let me talk about it. All right?
I don't want to let him talk about it. There's no need to talk about it. Again, it's hijacking the meeting. Trying to draw out the meeting so that we can run out the clock.
Mr. Sue, I'm just going to say, under the New Jersey statutes annotated 40:55D-10 hearings, and anything that you're saying is subject to the discretion of the presiding officer, who is Chairman Thaxton, and subject to reasonable limitations as to time. So please just be guided accordingly. You don't have an open floor here.
With all due respect, sir, if I wasn't interrupted, I would have already been finished.
Okay, Mr. Sue,
Can I just have a couple more sentences and that'll be the end of it, okay?
go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, sir. Look, I don't want any of the conflict that has been apparent, that I think has been generated against me during this hearing, to reflect on the applicant or the residents that are in objection. I really, my heart goes out to them because I don't think this is a fair situation. It's a self-created hardship. It's one self-created by the applicant. I feel that Mr. Cates correctly identified this notion of threat. It's not fair, and there's got to be a better solution than what we're hearing tonight. There really has to be. And I hope, the hearts of the members will be with their fellow residents in Paterson, because I don't think what happened in Totowa, I don't think they give two licks about Paterson from what I saw. So that's all I have to say. I thank you for your time, and I hope you make a good decision.
Mr. Cates, would you sum up, please?
Be happy to. Let me thank the board and the board staff for your attention to this matter, and as I said before, thank you for your public service. As you know, I represent 11 homeowners in the Hillcrest neighborhood of Paterson. They were identified on one of our exhibits, Exhibit 01. Through cross-examination of Mr. Cassis, we established that the subject lot in Paterson, as well as the abutting lot in Totowa, were acquired by the applicant on September 19, 2017. September 19, 2017. We produced Exhibit 02, which was the Passaic County summary sheet, showing the recording of the deed into Fortress of the two lots at a cost of $62,700. Together, these two lots comprise what is the proposed 40-space paved parking lot, 17.5 of those spaces in Paterson. Now, why is the September 27 date important? First, Mr. Cassis admitted on cross-examination that the lots were acquired for the specific purpose of satisfying Totowa's zoning board, which suggested that his parking was seriously deficient. That was the sole reason the lots were purchased. And second, not that they were acquired for that purpose. Second, notwithstanding that they were acquired for that purpose, on February 13, 2019, 1 year and 4+ months after acquiring the Paterson lot, an application was filed by Mr. Quasis. Why? What was going on in 2019? In 2019, Fortress filed an amended application to increase the height of the Totowa building from 4 stories to 6 stories, which would include rooftop patrons enjoying the partying in open air. If the Paterson lot were included in the 2019 application, at least 3 of my Paterson clients would have received statutory notice, being within 200 feet of the Paterson lot. Only one, I believe, the owner of 317 Berkshire Avenue apparently did. The owners of 309 Berkshire and 305 Berkshire did not get notice. In 2021, the parking lot was added in an amended application in Totowa, and only then was proper statutory notice given to my clients. And that notice caused additional homeowners concern, who joined the core of 3 to create a core of 11 that are part of this application opposition tonight. I was retained for the total hearing, which took place on May 14, 2021. When I raised the issue of defective notice of the prior hearing, I was promised the opportunity to brief the issue and return to argue my position at a later meeting. However, the promise was withdrawn and the board approved the amended application that night, long after their normal closing hour. The total approval has been appealed by my clients for that and other significant reasons. Notwithstanding the filing of the appeal on December 10, 2021. Excuse me, Maggie?
Sorry about that.
Notwithstanding the filing of the appeal in December 2021, and notwithstanding this board's just now concluding its consideration of the Paterson lot being in the mix, Mr. Cassis has continued to clear land and build his additional stories at his own risk. With the addition of the 40 spaces, the zoning board in Totowa granted a variance for an on-site parking deficiency. According to our witness, Mr. Tuvell, the parking variance was for 40% of the number of spaces required by the Totowa zoning ordinance, for a deficiency of 60%. Mr. Tuvell testified that the Totowa zoning ordinance assigns the required number of parking spaces to the specific uses in the building.
Excuse me, Mr. Cates. We're discussing the Paterson parking lot, nothing to do with Totowa. Can we just stick to the Paterson?
Well, I need to get this in order to relate it to Paterson. It's only another paragraph, Mr. Chairman, if you'll permit me. Tuvell testified that the different components in the Totowa plan, catering slash banquet hall, that parking is required based upon the number of fixed seats, and then there's extra seating for standing patrons, and then there was office use as well, and that was based upon square footage. So all of these factors comprising the need for parking were dictated by the density of use in Totowa. That's why applicant has come to this board to create an additional 40 spaces. Now, Mr. Tuvell further testified that commercial parking is not permitted in Paterson's single-family residential zone. Your code section 500-7.1 states, quote, "No land in a residential zone shall be used to fulfill the off-street parking or loading requirements for a use in a non-residential district." That's the link to Totowa. It simply means that the proposed use of the Paterson lot for off-street parking is prohibited by Paterson zoning, regardless of what Totowa's treatment may have been. It also means that a use variance is required to allow this parking lot to encroach into the Hillcrest neighborhood because it serves a commercial purpose. That also is the link to Totowa. So in my opinion, and let's talk some law here for a minute. In my opinion, there are two use variances. The one I just stated, and because the parking lot is an accessory use, not a principal use. What do I mean by that? An accessory use takes on the character of the use to which it is accessory. If the parking lot were accessory to a public school, it would be a public use. If it were accessory to an apartment building, it would be a multifamily use. Here, it is accessory to commercial uses in total. The third link, the total. Basically, this is what I stated in my opinion letter to Mr. Paparazzi, dated November 29 of last year, explaining that what transpired in Totowa is relevant to this board's consideration. Mr. Chairman, you continue to say that Totowa is irrelevant. I'd like that letter to be put into the record. I had actually copied you in and copied the board in on that letter, and the board attorney, and the applicant's attorney. And notwithstanding that explanation, I don't think recognized. I would like to ask you to admit my letter. I don't know whether it needs an exhibit number. I've referenced it. I've referenced it before tonight. If you can.
I'm gonna object to admission of the letter. That letter was not presented by a witness. That letter was presented by counsel as part of his summation. Absolutely not. I object to that letter being made part of the permanent record.
Well, you can object to it. I ask the board to decide. I would like it in the record as Exhibit 03.
Do we have a copy? Has anyone seen a copy of the letter?
Well, they should.
Is it within the application materials, or did it come in through testimony?
It came in through mail to Mr. Rush, to the board attorney, and to the chairman. And I assume it was received by the clerk's office and it was distributed to the board members, since they were copied. Maggie, do you have it?
The date is November 29th, 21?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Has Mr. Rush seen the letter?
I believe it was sent to me. I don't recall necessarily the content of the letter, but I do believe I did receive a letter from Mr. Cates. Again, I'm just going to put my objection in for the way it's being presented. Obviously, it wasn't part of the objector's case. This is it's being brought in on summation. There's been and obviously, I'm not in a position to question Mr. Cates about the content of his letter because he's counsel for the objectors.
Well, it's up to the board to have it, and then the board can decide what it wants to do with it.
I agree. I agree with you there. It's up to the board. Yeah.
It's up to the board. So I'm offering it as Exhibit 03 in evidence, Mr. Chairman. And then I'll complete it. Sorry.
Chairman Daxton, Mr. Ruby?
I'm sure we could treat it as an exhibit necessarily. It could be in the record as perhaps as part of the overall application, but an exhibit, I don't know. I think we maybe at this point, if we want to give Mr. Cates an opportunity to try to put it in through a witness, but at this late stage, I'm not sure we could.
Well, it's not relevant to a witness. It was addressed to Mr. Paparazzi and it was copied to the board because Mr. Paparazzi gave extensive testimony citing the Stop and Shop case in Milburn Short Hills, and I was challenging him on his legal conclusion.
Oh, this has to do with the legal analysis of court opinion?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I don't believe that we could treat it necessarily as an exhibit. You could certainly have it in the record.
Well, that's all I ask.
Okay.
All right, that said, so with respect to the two use variances, we're talking use variance, we submit that they cannot be justified as not relevant to your consideration or otherwise lowering this applicant's burden of proof. Use variances, as you well know, are justified by special reasons, meaning the proposed use fulfills a planning objective, advancing the general welfare, not the narrow interests of the applicant. There have been no such proofs that this parking lot advances the general welfare. in Totowa or in Paterson, but specifically in Paterson. This add-on parking lot does not serve the public welfare. If hardship is claimed, which is an element for consideration when you're deciding whether to grant a use variance, if hardship is claimed, it has not been proven. You have heard applicant's planner state that that the lot in Paterson is too small to support a single-family home, and you're led to the inference, therefore it's been zoned into inutility. At least that's the inference I gave that testimony. And that therefore, the argument goes, it's your responsibility to grant variance relief, to grant use variance relief. Don't be fooled. If the applicant can combine it with the adjoining lot in Totowa to create a 40-space parking lot, the applicant can combine it to make a single-family home site. I haven't asked them, but I am certain that it would remove many of my clients' concerns if this became a new home rather than a parking lot. Now, this is important. Any claimed hardship is nullified if it is self-created. And here, quite clearly, applicants' need for additional parking is because applicant chose to add 2 stories to the pre-existing 4-story building, adding tables and chairs and a patron population that required more and more parking. So hardship cannot just be used to justify the parking lot. It is a self-created hardship, and that was our planner's testimony, and I didn't hear applicant's planner contradict it. As to the negative criteria, you've heard from my clients tonight. And I would suggest to you that no condition you impose can protect them from substantial adverse effects of intruding into their neighborhood. Yes, they need your protection, but they can't get it through conditions as noble or as noble sounding as they may appear. Simply because you're not the enforcing agent, and the violation of noise and light and all the other bad things, apart from, as Mr. Durgan said, only being enforced by Totowa. Apart from that, they're not enforceable by the agencies that work in city halls. They're not enforced in the evening, after hours, on weekends, when this catering hall will be at peak use. And so who enforces it? It's left upon my clients, upon the residents, to call. To call who? To call the Paterson police? To call the Totowa police? It's a mess. And the best way to deal with it is for you to deny this application. Thank you.
Mr. Rush.
Yes, I have a rather unique request this evening, as my client has asked if he could actually sum up the application and address the board. I don't know if anyone has any objection to that or problem with that, but he's requesting that he actually do the summation.
Can that be done?
Presumably, Mr. Rush has counseled the applicant.
I've counseled him not to do this, but he's insisting that he do it. I've made it clear to him that he can't put any new testimony into the record. He can only address evidence that's been in the record as part of the summation.
I guess we would just say, to err on the side of caution, Mr. Case, is that, you have retained counsel, and just understand that you are acting over and against advice of your counsel. Are you certain you wish to do this?
Trying to act against the council. I'm just trying, because I don't believe anyone knows really the history of these lots. And I just wanted to bring to the attention of the chairman and the board members the history of the lots, because they keep talking about creeping developments.
I would just say to you, even now, if you just want a couple of minutes to have a private discussion with your attorney, you know, as to before you do this, because he's on record as saying that, you know, look, you're free. It's your application. I think you can do this, but I just want you to be very sure that you want to do it. I mean, you've got very able counsel here, and you know, he doesn't seem to think it's a good idea. So before,
adjournment? Do we have a 5 minute?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maggie,
Yes, Chairman?
could you, call Mr. Rush and ask him, can he, speed it up?
Okay, I will.
Linda, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Chairman, obviously, we're ready to proceed, and I'm going to sum up. And I will make it brief as possible for the board and everyone attending tonight.
Go ahead.
Okay, just to begin with, just to kind of go back to the point that we were discussing why the applicant wanted to sum up himself, was, as I stated earlier, I wasn't part of the Totowa application. I didn't represent the applicant in Totowa. So I wasn't aware of a little bit of history that was raised by Mr. Cates with respect to how the property was purchased. My client has indicated to me that when he originally purchased the property, when I say the property, I mean the entire Totowa site where the banquet hall is located and things of that nature, that 322, 324 Berkshire, he believed was, and it was part of the purchase. There was a mistake with the deed from the title company at the time of the purchase. The deeds didn't reflect the fact that the Paterson property was actually part of the entire purchase when he purchased the property. That being said, it never reflected his ownership on the record. Go and purchase 322, 324 after running into problems in Totowa. He believed, well, that he did run into problems, obviously, the tax sale with the title company. But in fact, he didn't believe that, he always believed that that was a lot that he was purchasing. That was part of the numerous lots that he purchased when he obtained the entire property. So, just want to clarify, to provide some history.
I just make a comment, if in fact his intention was from the beginning to include the lot we're talking about in Paterson, he didn't. The application goes back to 2015. And the Paterson lots were ignored for a period of many years, whether he owned them or intended to own them or thought he owned them, he never made them part of his development application. So, I mean, if we're gonna reopen this and put Mr. Cease back under oath, and he wants to relate that history, that's fine with me, but he had the opportunity, when I questioned him, to raise these points under oath, and he didn't. So, I mean, this is like a second bite at the apple to create additional testimony relating to what happened in Totowa.
Well, I don't think it was a second bite of the apple. I think you brought up the history of the property, and I think Mr. Case just wanted to correct the fact that he did intend to he did believe he bought it. He didn't even know it was Paterson when he bought it.
But it makes it worse, because if he believes he bought it and he planned to use it, he didn't notice the people in Paterson.
I'm gonna address the notice. I'm gonna address the notice issue as we go further. That being said, I'm done talking about the history of the property. That's the facts that Mr. Cases wanted me to get on the record, and basically just explain why there appears to be two separate purchases and there were, but how that occurred, how that situation occurred. That being said, going forward.
Block and lot number?
I don't know. For which parking lot?
Prior owner?
Gentlemen, I have a copy of the deed which lists these two parcels in the record.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sue, I'm summing up now. Mr. Sue, I'm summing up now.
Mr. Sue, can you please stop interrupting? Go ahead, Mr. Russ.
Okay. That being said, council raised several issues in the summation with regards to basically technical, as he said, legal issues. One of which is, in his opinion, this application requires 2 D-variances. In fact, again, that's his opinion. This application was submitted, it was reviewed by Paterson's engineer, reviewed by Paterson's planner, and deemed as a complete application. There was no indication from either of the board's professionals or anyone else who had reviewed the application that in fact there needed to be 2 D-variances. That's in fact Mr. Cates' opinion, and obviously he's entitled to his opinion, but the board, the proper notice was provided for the necessary D-variance that this in fact requires. That being said, as far as his issues with certain people not being noticed, of course, you don't get to a hearing unless proper notice is given, and that in fact is also checked by the board, normally the board secretary, board attorney, prior to the application even going forward. If proper notice wasn't given, then the board would not entertain it. The board could not legally entertain it. And no one has brought to the board's attention any deficiency with notice until summation right now. Again, there's no evidence of any deficiency, and this is just Mr. Cates' opinion. It might be basis for his appeal, which I believe that's what he did in the summation, trying to set up his appeal, but basically all it is his opinion. Once again, there was no evidence in the record anywhere at any time by any of these objectors who have spent now almost 3 complete nights putting in their objector's case. Did we ever hear about an issue with a second D notice? And again, like he said, he has a planner on. His planner could have testified to that. And in fact, he also had other people testify, and they could have testified to the fact that there was deficient notice. Again, this is part of his summation, and it is part of his opinion, and it's probably going to be grounds for his appeal. That being said, the proper notice was provided. The testimony in this application, I think, is without a doubt clear as day. The fact that this application and approving this application will, in fact, help the residents of that area. It will not harm them. Mr. Case has just testified, based on the commissioner's questions earlier, that he's actually going to have 3 retaining walls around the property now. There'll be absolutely no access whatsoever from Berkshire. No one will even be able to access it because there'll be a 4 to 6 foot wall there. There's going to be significant buffering. There's going to be a drainage system, which Mr. Case has testified to the fact that it costs over $100,000. Other than that, as I said earlier, and as Mr. Case has testified earlier, if this application is denied, then basically it's going to be an empty lot. There'll be access from Berkshire, and in fact there'll be none of the improvements to the land. I'm lost to see how anyone could possibly argue that denying this application is in the interest of the Paterson residents. I'm well aware no one is happy about the fact that there is, in fact, a banquet hall in Total right on the property's borderline. But that was the total application. That's not the application in front of this board. This board has to decide what is in the best interest of the citizens of Paterson based upon the evidence presented in front of it and the application in front of it. Based on the application in front of it and the evidence presented throughout this entire proceeding, it's clearly in the benefit of the Paterson residents to approve this application. Thank you.
Gary.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to start off with just quickly with a question to Mr. Rush. The property at the end of Berkshire to the, I guess, west or southwest of the applicant's property, does he have any ownership in that lot at all that you know of?
What property would that be?
The one at the end of Berkshire, where some of the stones and water is coming to run off.
To the best of my knowledge, no. I don't believe Jones has any ownership in that whatsoever.
All right. I'm gonna start off first by, addressing the, information that I wanted to put on the record. Now, I was not, I want the commissioners to be, assured of this. I was not leading anybody. I was merely reaffirming the testimony that was given. Now, that testimony was given. I was just making it clear, number one, and number two, we have some commissioners that are new. So I wanted this to be, again, put on the record so there was no misunderstanding, and there were some new commissioners that I think were entitled to hear that. Now, as far as the variances go, we have 3 variances. We have a use variance, we have, which is a D1 variance, and we have 2 C variances. One is the maximum height for the front yard of the fence, which is only 4 feet allowed and 6 feet is proposed. And the parking stall sizes, requirement are 9 by 18 and 9 by 16 is proposed, and obviously that is because of valet parking. But those are the variances that are in front of the board tonight. Now, the board can address the use variance and vote on the use variance. This lot, as the parking lot, would be an accessory use to the principal use. Now, in municipal land use, I'm going to read it right from municipal land use law. Accessory uses which are either not permitted by ordinance or which are necessary to a non-conforming principal use can be allowed by way of variance to the Board of Adjustment, which is why you are here tonight. Those are the issues, and everything that I had said to put on the record is what is important for the people of Paterson. Now, if the board should vote to approve this, the applicant's plan from MCB Engineering has to be revised because on there it has access, emergency access, and the gate emergency access. So that has to be removed, and a wall has to be proposed there, which I think would satisfy Mr. Durkin. Additionally, the arborvitae's that we talked about at prior meetings needs to also be shown on that plan. It was sheet 1 of 1 by MCB Engineering. So you need to remove that emergency access and gate access by emergency services only, show the proposed wall so that there is obviously no access, show the proposed arborvitae's as well. And additionally, if the board should approve this application, I think that the secretary should notify engineering about that issue with the water. Now, the issue with the water, part of it obviously is because the Princess Avenue in Berkshire is 100 feet or so difference in elevation. And the water has nowhere to go but down because Preakness is 100 feet higher than the end of Berkshire. So I think engineering, if they look at it and there is a possible solution to not only to the applicant's property, but to the property to the left of his, which is at the end of Berkshire, I think that if they contacted the engineering in total, I think it's possible that they come up with a solution that they could implement that solution and help not only with the drainage and water, but with the runoff off of onto Berkshire and Linwood. So those are the conditions I would suggest if the board were to approve the application. And if there are any questions from the board members, I'm happy to answer. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Any board members have questions? Not hearing any questions. Maggie, is there anyone in the public out there? wishing
second, me one
to
moment.
speak or comment?
We have no callers at this time.
All right, I think maybe we can get a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Commissioner Minaro.
All in favor?
Commissioners, all in favor?
Aye. Commissioner Watkins, aye.
Aye. Commissioner Torres.
Commissioner White, aye.
Get another one.
Commissioner Baralt?
Aye, Commissioner Barrow.
All right, the motion is carried. The public hearing is closed. If the commissioner would care to commence deliberation.
Maggie, can you, would someone like to make a motion to deny or approve this application?
I'm Commissioner Barrow. I make a motion to approve this application, based on that the applicant takes into consideration Gary's recommendation.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Watkins, second it.
Commissioner
Based on the conditions that with Gary,
Commissioner Watkins, excuse me, ma'am, you cannot vote. The following commissioners can vote: Commissioner Baralt, Furman, Minaudo, Arenas, and Thaxton.
Okay.
Seconded, Maggie. Commissioner Minaro.
Thank you, Commissioner Minaudo.
All of the, I'm sorry, based on the conditions that, Gary gave and holding, the applicant accountable for everything that he promised the residents.
Yes. Thank you very much. Commissioners, Commissioner Baralt.
Yes, I motion to approve. Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Furman.
Hi, good evening. For the record, can I please make a comment?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see this application, what it is today, and what it's gonna be tomorrow. I mean, I understand there's a lot of conflict, but I'm going, what my heart is telling me, I'm going with the positive. This, approving this application, it will be much better than what it is today. I'm thinking about the city, and I'm also thinking about the people. Therefore, my vote is yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Minaudo?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Arenas?
Yes.
And Chairman Thaxton?
Yes.
This application has been granted. Thank you.
You skipped a few.
I-
You skipped the vice chair.
I know, they were not here at the previous
Oh.
meeting.
That is five votes.
5 in the affirmative.
It's a supermajority of a 7-member board. Relief is granted.
Could I ask the clerk whether the new members referred to by Mr. Paparazzi, he said you have a change of membership, whether they have read the transcripts of the prior hearings and have certified so?
Did you order a transcript?
Not transcripts, whatever a board member has available to it, provided by the city, not by me.
I would just counsel the board that I don't believe you are under any obligation to answer that question. You can if you want to, but you're not on trial here.
There's no new commissioners. I mean, every commissioner was at every hearing, so,
That was the question I raised. Has every commissioner who voted tonight attended each of the what, 4 sessions now?
Commissioners
Yeah,
were at the meet.
We're not gonna, I mean, we're not under any obligation to answer those questions. I think the commissioners are presumptively prepared to do their duty, and I do not believe that they owe anyone an answer to that question.
If they attended, you're right, but if they didn't attend, they can't vote. Unless they certify to the board that they've either read the transcript or listened to the tape.
Mr. Case, did you guys order any transcripts? Did your firm order any transcripts?
Not yet,
No.
No,
but that's not the issue.
Okay, Maggie, the vote is, Maggie, can you?
it's 5 in the affirmative.
Thank you.
One is one is absent and one was recused. And the
So,
other
okay,
two
so-
were not at the meeting. The other 2 commissioners were not at the previous meeting, so they did not hear testimony.
So Commissioner White did not vote, and then Commissioner Rohim,
Was not here, and neither was Commissioner Watkins. They were absent.
Okay. Thank you, Maggie.
You're welcome.
So it's Mr. Rush, you have your approval.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman. And thank you to the board. We appreciate your time and effort on this very trying application. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have minutes to adopt. Madam State Chairman? Thank you. The meetings minutes are as follows: of December 2nd, 2021, December 9th, 2021, December 16th, 2021, and January 6th, 2022. Can I have a first motion, please?
Move.
What was that?
Second by Commissioner Furman.
What was the first?
Rahim.
The first, who was the first?
Rohim, Commissioner Rohim,
And who was the second?
Commissioner Furman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Commissioners, Commissioner Rohim,
Yes.
Commissioner Baralt,
Yes.
Commissioner Furman,
Yes.
Commissioner Minauro,
That's a yes.
Commissioner Watkins,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
White or white?
White,
Yes.
White. Commissioner Arenas,
Yes.
and Chairman Thaxton.
Yes.
These minutes have been adopted. I have no further business.
Okay, the meeting's adjourned, people.
Everyone enjoy their weekend.
Have a nice weekend.
Two.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. Birthday, Louis Vega.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Myra, I like your background.
Happy birthday to Maggie's husband.
Thank you, Mark, for
Birthday. That is so cute. Thank you.
Nice work, everybody. It's really been a pleasure working with you. I hope I get to do it again.
I hope so too, I like you.
Thank you.
The feeling is mutual. You're